Dragons have filled our collective imaginations for a long time, and I doubt that's something that's ever gonna change. They've been with us since the dawn of civilization. Almost every culture in the world has a myth of dragon-like creatures. Their origin is seeped in folklore and mythology, and they're often interpreted in various different ways. Western Europe saw them as evil, destructive forces of nature, something to fear and to be slain by brave heroes. It was a medieval practice of putting illustrations of dragons, sea monsters, and other mythological creatures on uncharted areas of a map where potential dangers were thought to exist. China, on the other hand, viewed them as benevolent and wise creatures, a symbol for good luck and prosperity, with many members of the imperial house claiming to be descendant from dragons. We've seen this mythological beast be rewritten time and time again. No matter how many different spins we have on dragons, it never seems to get old. They've now become a staple in pop culture and are probably one of the first things you think of when you think of fantasy. And since this channel is mostly about fantasy books, I'm gonna be going over my top 10 dragons in fiction. But real quick, a word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Dragon City, which is very fitting considering the topic of this video. Have you ever wanted to collect over 1,000 different dragons and build a vast dragon kingdom? Well, you can do just that with Dragon City. Dragon City is a free-to-play game available on both iOS and Android. You can breed your dragons to get new ones and feed them to evolve. Train your dragons and take them to battle to make them even more devastatingly powerful. If you like Pokemon and you like dragons, then this is the game for you. There's different PvP modes that let you fight against your friends and challenge other dragon masters. And there's also several different events every single week to help you discover and play new adventures. Events such as Maze, Runner, Grid, and Heroic Race. There's something for everyone. You can even find a lot of popular YouTubers in Dragon City, like Fundy, Dream, George Not Found, and Eddie VR, and many others. Click the link in the description for a special free reward of 15,000 food, 30,000 gold, plus the rare Citadel Dragon. Now these are only available to new users and only for 7 days, so make sure to use my link to download the game and get your exclusive rewards. Thank you to Dragon City for sponsoring this video. Now, I won't be ranking these by their power levels or how badass they are. I'm loosely ranking them on my personal enjoyment while reading these stories, and you can feel free to let me know your top 10 dragons in the comments. I think it's best to start off with the very first piece of English literature to present a dragon slayer. The timeless Anglo-Saxon epic poem Beowulf. In the final act, we see Beowulf face off against an unnamed dragon that's been terrorizing the countryside. The fight ends with the deaths of both Beowulf and the dragon. Now, while the dragon didn't receive any characterization, it still makes its way on this list for how influential it was for all the fantasy stories that followed. The next spot goes to the dragons from the Dragon Riders of PERN by Anne McCaffrey. Dragonflight shot McCaffrey to fame back in the 1960s, making her the first female writer to win both a Hugo and a Nebula Award. This is a classic, a staple in science fiction that takes place in the far future where humans colonized a planet called PERN, which is protected by dragons and their riders. At the time, these featured an incredible concept, dragons that have a telepathic link with humans. While we've seen this done plenty of times now, these books were the very first. Now, I will say that the PERN books can be kind of dry and the human characters aren't really the best, but the world building and the dragons are where these books shine. The Inheritance Cycle is a series that gets a lot of flack. Now, it's been a long time since I've read them, so I don't really know how they hold up. I'm sure that the overuse of common tropes and the writing style might not really be my thing now, but I do remember really loving the dragons. Now, Aragon bonds with Saphira, and this bond allows them to communicate via a form of telepathy, in addition to feeling one another's emotions. Now, this was long before I heard of the Dragon Riders of PERN books, so this was pretty mind-blowing for me. It was the first time I got to see a dragon portrayed as a thoughtful, emotional, sentient being rather than a brutish monster. Aragon and Saphira always got each other's back, and they make a good team. Next is Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. Toothless in the movies and Toothless in the books are quite different. I'm more familiar with the movie version, which probably needs little introduction. He's adorable, and also fierce and intelligent and brave and lovable. Toothless deserves a spot on this list. Now, Toothless is a Night Fury, one of the rarest dragons known to exist, and the last of its kind. Once thought of to be the offspring between lightning and death itself, Toothless turned out to be very playful and affectionate to his best friend Hiccup. He's able to hold his own against much larger dragons with his sonar abilities that are conducted through a plasma blast and his speed that allows him to dive bomb targets. How could I not include Toothless? I knew that I wanted to include a dragon from A Song of Ice and Fire, and I knew there was 3 obvious choices, specifically Drogon the Mama's Boy. But I decided instead to go with Balerion, also named the Black Dread. Balerion was one of the last 3 great dragons of Aegon Targaryen I. Aegon used Balerion to kill a lot of people and conquer most of Westeros during the War of Conquest. He was the largest of all the Targaryen dragons. His wingspan was so huge that entire towns could be bathed in shadow when he took flight, and had a jaw so big he could swallow mammoths whole. His breath was so hot he could turn areas of sand into glass. Because of how terrifyingly powerful Balerion was, it's one of the few dragons on this list that actually died peacefully from old age, rather than at the hands of a dragon slayer. Next is the Hungarian Horntail. For the first task of the Triwizard Tournament in the Goblet of Fire, the chosen students must steal a golden egg from a dragon's nest. Harry goes up against the Hungarian Horntail, considered to be one of the most dangerous breeds. They're incredibly ferocious and aggressive, standing an imposing 50 feet tall. The Horntail made its mark as a memorable obstacle for Harry, which is why it makes its way onto this list. I grew up watching Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and also reading the manga, which I recently reread. Now, Shenron, the Eternal Dragon, can be summoned by collecting all 7 of the mystical artifacts known as Dragon Balls. Shenron is said to live in the fiery center of the earth, and whenever he's called, he will arrive to grant one wish before returning to his home to sleep until he's called again. And the Dragon Balls can't be used for one entire year after a wish is made. Now, Shenron was originally created by the creator to inspire humans. Much to his regret though, the humans later came to abuse this power that the Dragon Balls gave them, using it for their own personal gain. Shenron is actually one of the most important characters in the entire franchise. A wish-granting dragon is pretty cool. Let me know what you would wish for if you came across the Dragon Balls. The Hobbit introduces one of the most famous dragons in literature, Smaug, King Under the Mountain. Now, Smaug had a profound impact on dragon depictions going forward. And while I do have gripes with the Hobbit movies, I don't when it comes to how they adapted Smaug. Benedict Cumberbatch did an amazing job. After destroying Lake Town and driving all the dwarves out of Erebor, Smaug the Fire Drake tucked himself away for 171 years before Bilbo Baggins, Gandalf, and their company of dwarves set out to reclaim the Lonely Mountain treasure hoard. Smaug the Terrible is covered in impenetrable armor, immune to most weapons, and was strong enough to crush stone. He was able to breathe fire hot enough to melt metal, and his body was imbued with fire, glowing in the dark like a furnace. Tolkien attempted to give his dragons more life and intelligence compared to those told of before, and sure enough, Smaug, the last of Middle-earth's great dragons, is responsible for cementing the classic trope of a cunning and scheming dragon. Rather than being simply a senseless monster, Smaug is an intellectual adversary while also displaying immense physical strength and power. However, his one downfall was a small patch in his jewel-encrusted belly, a weak point that Bard used to his advantage. But Smaug will always be remembered as one of the greatest dragons in literature. Now, as terrible as Smaug is, he's actually one of the weaker dragons compared to those throughout the history of Middle-earth. In the Silmarillion, we learn of Encalagon the Black, who was the greatest of all winged dragons. He was bred by Morgoth during the First Age and was the largest dragon to have ever existed in Middle-earth, and appeared during the War of Wrath. Encalagon's fire was said to be hotter than the flames of any other dragon. His breath was so hot that it could melt and consume the rings of power, but not the One Ring. Encalagon certainly deserves his own spot on this list for being the most powerful dragon in all of Tolkien's mythology. In my opinion, some of the very best dragons come from the EARTHSEA books by Ursula K. Le Guin. Some of the most acclaimed works in fantasy literature. The world of EARTHSEA is one of my favorites, and dragons are a huge component of the setting. Le Guin gave us the gold standard of what dragons could be. In the EARTHSEA cycle, they're neither good nor bad, but very unpredictable. They're ancient and frighteningly unknowable. This is one series that's a classic for a reason, and you should read it. Now for some honorable mentions. I know that Naomi Novik does dragons really well, but I haven't read that series yet. Also, Robin Hobb does dragons really well, but I've only read Farseer. The Dragon Reborn from the Wheel of Time, but I don't really know if that counts. The Comical Dragons from Guards Guards by Terry Pratchett. The Chromatic Dragons from Dragonlance. Eustace from The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So those are my top 10 dragons in fiction. Let me know yours in the comments. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, and you can join the Patreon if you want to help support the channel. Also join the Discord. Now guys, don't forget to use the link in the description to download Dragon City and get your exclusive rewards, including the rare Citadel Dragon. Thank you to Dragon City for sponsoring this video.